Caleb was 22, working nights as a security technician for a company that installed cameras and alarm systems around Phoenix, Arizona. He liked the job well enough, even the odd hours, because it left his mornings free, and mornings were his favorite time of day, cool and quiet before the desert heat set in properly. His family lived in a duplex on the edge of the city, the kind of house split down the middle into two separate units, sharing one wall and one long, flat rooftop patio that both households technically had access to, divided only by a low decorative railing that nobody had ever bothered to make into a real barrier. They had moved there 2 years earlier after Caleb's father took a new job managing a distribution center nearby, leaving behind a much larger house in Tucson that the family still talked about wistfully sometimes at dinner. The Tucson house had a real backyard, big enough for the above-ground pool his father had installed the summer Caleb turned 16. Moving to Phoenix meant giving that up for something smaller and more practical, closer to work, closer to the highway, closer to everything except the kind of open space Caleb had grown up with. The rooftop patio had become, in a strange way, his substitute for that lost backyard, the one place in the new house that still felt like it belonged mostly to him. The other half of the duplex belonged to the Whitfield family. Caleb didn't know them well, mostly nodding hello when their paths crossed near the mailboxes. Their daughter, Emma, was somewhere around 16 or 17, though Caleb had never asked directly. She kept mostly to herself, from what he could tell, though he noticed early on that she seemed to watch him more than seemed ordinary, glancing over from her side of the shared patio whenever he stepped outside. He liked to use that rooftop patio himself, most evenings after his shift ended around midnight, bringing up a folding chair and a cold drink, enjoying the rare quiet of the desert night before heading to bed. It became a habit that grounded him, a small stretch of calm at the end of long, repetitive shifts spent staring at monitor screens. At first, Emma's presence on the patio seemed like simple coincidence, the two of them occasionally overlapping, since it was shared space anyway. But within a few weeks, it stopped feeling like coincidence at all. She began appearing every single time he came up, regardless of the hour, sometimes waiting there already when he arrived, other times slipping out through her own door, only minutes after he settled into his chair, as though she had been watching for him. She rarely spoke much at first, just lingered nearby, occasionally humming quietly to herself, a habit that unsettled Caleb more than he could easily explain to anyone who hadn't experienced it directly. There was something about the persistence of it, the sense that this had stopped being casual and become deliberate, that made the hair on his arms stand up more than once. Being someone who worked with security systems for a living, Caleb's first instinct, once the pattern became undeniable, was not to simply hope it would pass. He mentioned it to his supervisor at work, half joking at first, describing the situation as probably nothing, and his supervisor, a woman named Denise who had worked in the security industry for over a decade, gave him a look that told him she didn't think it sounded like nothing at all. "You should document this," she said. "Not because you're necessarily in danger, but because patterns like this can escalate, and if they do, you'll want a clear record instead of just your memory of when things happened." Caleb took her advice seriously. He started a simple log on his phone, noting dates and times whenever Emma appeared on the shared patio, keeping it factual and unemotional, just times and brief descriptions. It felt strange at first, almost paranoid, but as the entries accumulated over several weeks, the pattern became impossible to explain away as coincidence, even to himself. Reading back through the log one night, scrolling through nearly a month of entries, Caleb felt a small chill settle over him that had nothing to do with the desert air cooling after sunset. Written out plainly, date after date, the pattern looked different than it had felt living through it one evening at a time. Individually, each entry seemed almost forgettable. A girl sitting nearby, humming quietly, nothing dramatic enough to justify real alarm, but laid end to end, the consistency of it, the sheer number of nights she had specifically chosen to be exactly where he was, told a story his instincts had apparently understood long before his conscious mind had caught up to it. Then came the rumor. A neighbor down the street, a woman who ran a small home daycare and knew most of the families on the block, mentioned to Caleb's mother one afternoon that she'd heard Caleb and Emma had been getting close, meeting up regularly on the shared patio. Caleb's mother, confused and a little alarmed, brought it straight to him that evening. "Is there something going on between you two I should know about?" she asked, not accusing him exactly, but clearly needing to ask directly. "Absolutely not," Caleb said, pulling up the log on his phone and showing her the entries, dates stretching back weeks, all of them documenting Emma's unexplained presence rather than any interaction he had sought out. "I've actually been keeping track of this because it started feeling like too much of a pattern to ignore." His mother scrolled through the log carefully, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't want it to sound like I was overreacting," Caleb admitted. "It's just a girl hanging around on a shared patio. Technically, it's hard to explain why it feels like more than that, unless you've actually experienced it." If you are enjoying this story so far, please like this video and subscribe for more emotional English stories. Now, let's continue. His parents believed him immediately, especially with the documented pattern laid out clearly in front of them, dates and times that left little room for doubt. His father, usually a calm and measured man, grew visibly frustrated hearing the full extent of it laid out at once instead of in scattered mentions. "This has been going on for over a month, and we're only hearing the whole picture now?" he said. "Caleb, this isn't something to just quietly manage on your own." "I know," Caleb said. "I think I kept hoping it would just stop on its own, honestly." "That's the thing about hoping," his father said, softening slightly. "It's not really a plan. It's just waiting and calling it patience." He rubbed his forehead, thinking, "I'm not upset with you. I'm upset that you felt like you had to figure this out mostly by yourself before bringing it to us." Caleb's younger sister, Maya, who had been listening quietly from the kitchen doorway, spoke up for the first time. "I noticed her staring sometimes too from the window. I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just kind of awkward, maybe didn't have a lot of friends." "That might still be true," their mother said. "That doesn't make it okay, but it might explain part of it. Loneliness makes people do strange things sometimes, reaching out in ways that aren't healthy, for them or for whoever they've fixated on." They agreed, that same evening, that Caleb should avoid the shared patio entirely for a while, and his mother mentioned she would speak carefully with the Whitfields about the rumor, though not yet about the deeper pattern, not until they had a clearer sense of how to handle it properly. Caleb stopped using the rooftop patio for nearly 2 months after that conversation. He missed it more than he expected, that quiet stretch of calm at the end of long shifts, but he found other ways to unwind, mostly sitting in his car in the driveway for a while before heading inside. An imperfect substitute, but a private one at least. Eventually, Hearing nothing further and noticing Emma seemed to have stopped watching him quite so obviously from her window, he let himself believe the situation had cooled down. One warm night in late summer, after a particularly grueling shift, he gave in and climbed back up to the patio, telling himself a single evening wouldn't undo 2 months of quiet. He settled into his folding chair, put in his earbuds, and let himself relax for the first time in a while. At some point, scrolling through his phone in the dark, he felt something brush lightly against his ankle. He nearly dropped his phone reaching for the flashlight function, and when the light clicked on, Emma was sitting cross-legged less than 2 feet away, close enough that she must have been sitting there, silently, for some time before he noticed. He was on his feet immediately, chair scraping loudly against the concrete, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "You scared me," he said, his voice shaking slightly, despite his effort to sound calm rather than frightened. "I wasn't trying to," Emma said quietly, not moving from where she sat. "I just wanted to sit with you for a while." Caleb didn't wait to hear anything more. He grabbed his phone and headed straight for the patio door, moving quickly but carefully, not wanting to seem like he was fleeing, even though that was exactly what he was doing. This time, instead of simply avoiding the situation quietly, he went directly to his laptop and pulled up the footage from one of the small security cameras his company had installed on their side of the duplex months earlier, mostly for package theft concerns, rather than anything like this. The angle wasn't perfect, but it clearly showed Emma slipping onto the patio nearly 40 minutes before Caleb himself had come up that evening, sitting perfectly still near his usual chair, waiting. He showed the footage to his parents the next morning, alongside his written log, laying out the entire situation with hard evidence, instead of just his own account of events. His father watched the footage twice, his jaw tightening. "This isn't a misunderstanding anymore. This is someone deliberately waiting for you, in the dark, for the better part of an hour." They contacted the property management company that oversaw the duplex complex first, since technically both families were renting under the same landlord, and shared spaces like the rooftop patio fell under specific rules the management company could actually enforce. A representative reviewed the footage and the log Caleb had kept, and within a week sent formal written notice to the Whitfield family, restricting unsupervised access to the shared patio and documenting the incident officially in their tenant file, a serious step that went beyond simple neighborly conversation. Caleb's parents also insisted on filing a brief, factual report with the local police, not to pursue any criminal charges, since nothing had escalated to a level requiring that, but to create an official record establishing a documented pattern in case anything similar happened again in the future, either with Emma or through some other unexpected situation. An officer who came by to take the report treated it seriously, noting the footage and the log with evident approval. "Documentation like this makes all the difference," the officer told Caleb before leaving. "A lot of people wait until something serious happens before they start keeping records. You did the smart thing, keeping track from early on." The officer also asked a few careful questions about Emma's age, noting that if she was indeed a minor, as Caleb suspected, the situation would likely be handled differently than if all parties involved were adults, more focused on getting her family support and supervision than on any kind of punishment. "That's actually good news for you, in a way," the officer said. "It means the system is more likely to focus on getting her help than on making this complicated for you." but it also means you did the right thing, keeping things factual and non-confrontational the whole time. That matters." Caleb appreciated the reassurance, though the visit itself left him feeling strange for the rest of the day, a mixture of relief that he had finally handled things properly and a lingering unease that it had reached the point of needing a police report at all, over something that had started as nothing more than an odd neighbor sitting nearby on a shared patio. The Whitfield family, confronted with clear video evidence rather than secondhand rumors, responded with visible embarrassment and concern. Emma's mother came by personally to apologize, her voice tight with what seemed like genuine distress. "I had no idea it had gone this far," she said. "Emma's been struggling since we moved here, more than I think I let myself notice. We're getting her into counseling. I'm so sorry this happened to your family." Caleb's mother listened patiently, offering neither easy forgiveness nor unnecessary harshness. "I appreciate you coming to say this directly," she said. "I hope she gets whatever support she needs. But I also need you to understand how frightening this was for my son, and how seriously we needed to take it, regardless of what was behind it." "I understand completely," Emma's mother said. "You did exactly what any parent should do. I just wish we'd noticed sooner, before it reached this point." There was an awkward pause after that, neither woman quite sure what else needed saying. Emma's mother finally added, quieter now, "For what it's worth, she's not a bad kid. She's just been having a hard time since we moved, and I think she latched onto something that felt familiar, in a way that got out of hand before any of us realized how far it had gone." "I believe you," Caleb's mother said. "I hope things get easier for her." Within another month, the Whitfields decided to break their lease early and move to a different part of the city entirely, a decision Caleb's parents hadn't pushed for directly, but understood as the cleanest resolution available. Caleb felt an odd mixture of relief and something quieter, something like sympathy he hadn't expected to feel once the fear had faded. Once the other half of the duplex sat empty, awaiting new tenants, Caleb returned to the rooftop patio properly for the first time in months. He brought up his folding chair, a cold drink, and sat there under the wide desert sky, the quiet finally feeling like actual quiet again, instead of a silence he had to watch carefully. His mother joined him up there one evening not long after, settling into the second chair he'd started keeping up there for her. "You handled that whole situation better than I would have, at your age," she said. "Keeping records, going to your supervisor for advice, not just hoping it would disappear on its own." "I almost didn't," Caleb admitted. "For a while I kept thinking I was overreacting, that it was just an awkward neighbor thing that would sort itself out eventually." "Some things don't sort themselves out," his mother said. "Sometimes you actually have to do something about them, even when it feels uncomfortable to take it seriously." She looked out over the quiet street below, the empty half of the duplex dark and still beside them. "I'm proud of you for taking it seriously, even before we fully understood how serious it was." Caleb thought about his sister's comment from weeks earlier, about how she had noticed the staring too, and hadn't thought much of it. He wondered how many small warning signs like that existed in ordinary life, easy to dismiss individually, only becoming clear once someone finally wrote them all down in one place and looked at them together. "Do you think she's actually getting help?" he asked. "Or is her family just moving somewhere else and hoping the problem moves with them?" His mother considered the question seriously. "I hope it's the first one. I genuinely do. Whatever was going on with her, moving away doesn't necessarily fix it, if nobody actually addresses the reason behind it." But that's not really something we can control anymore. We did what we needed to do to keep you safe, and to make sure this family's name wasn't dragged through false rumors. What happens with the Whitfields from here is between them. That feels a little unsatisfying, Caleb admitted. Like there should be a cleaner ending than that. Real situations rarely tie up as neatly as we'd like, his mother said. You're safe, you're believed, the truth is documented, clearly, in case anyone ever brings it up again. That's about as clean an ending as situations like this usually get. Caleb nodded, leaning back in his chair, letting the cool night air settle around him the way it used to before any of this started. He thought about how close he had come to simply staying quiet, hoping the discomfort would resolve itself without him having to make it into a bigger issue than it seemed on the surface. He understood now, more clearly than before, that documenting a problem honestly and asking for help early wasn't overreacting at all. It was simply the difference between hoping a difficult situation would disappear and actually making sure it did. If you liked this story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.